Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning at our City Council meeting. We'll go ahead and get started. Ruth, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Gray?
Here.
Brown?
Here.
Johnston?
Here.
Moore?
Here.
Orr?
Here.
Black?
Here. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 2, Historic Preservation Commission update. Representatives from the Historic Preservation Commission will discuss the Commission's goals and projects as well as Council's policies and expectations. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Blatt and Council. I'm Terry New, the staff liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, and this is Nick Nielsen, our Historic Preservation Commission Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor Blatt and City Council members. We had a very successful year with the Historic Preservation Commission this year. We feel like we accomplished quite a bit, and I'd like to go over a few things that we were able to get done. We have continued our design review of exterior alterations in the Old Town Historic District. In 2015, 7 applications were reviewed. So far in 2016, 8 certificates of appropriateness have been reviewed. With regard to current or upcoming projects, we have published 2 newsletters this year and are planning on publishing a 3rd newsletter in October. We have focused on Frank Paradise, a pioneer in Pocatello architecture, and have also focused on the Fort Hall replica. We are planning on showcasing the Brady Chapel in October. We are continuing our partnership with Old Town Pocatello on projects to improve and promote the Old Town Historic District. We have at least 1 commission member attend the Old Town Design Committee meeting every month. We are currently working on a digital photo library of historic buildings and areas in Pocatello, and we would like to eventually make that available to the public. We are currently partnering with Parks and Recreation to preserve the Brady Chapel. Our commission has met with John Banks and Martin Peace just recently to go over our ideas and thoughts about uses for the Brady Chapel in the future. Also, we have had 2 commissioners staff the Brady Chapel for 4 to 5 hours on Memorial Day. We are planning a self-guided tour scavenger hunt with a light reception in the Brady Chapel just before Halloween. We invite all council members to attend. We are planning a work day on July 16th to touch up the paint on the Downtown Historic District sign on East Center at the underpass. We celebrated Idaho Day on March 4th with a proclamation and presentations and a very nice lunch in this room, the City Council chambers. Just recently in May, on May 20th and May 21st, we hosted a Historic Preservation Archaeology Symposium. The presentations included Pocatello and the Portneuf from 1940 to 1980, Japanese Americans at the Minidoka Relocation Center, Pocatello street names preserve our history, the history of Pocatello High School, Frank Paradise, Relight the Night, housing and occupation in Pocatello 1920, Folsom Points, rock art around Pocatello, Idaho, and the Bear River Massacre site. We are planning on having another symposium on April 29th, 2017. We have been working and are continuing to work with the city in restoring the Greyhound Depot so it can be used for offices, ADA restrooms for bus patrons, and a transportation museum in the passenger waiting area. We are moving forward, and we believe that we can continue to accomplish many great things. Are there any questions?
Council?
This, of course, is one of my great loves, history. What do you think has been the greatest accomplishment of this outreach of the city?
I believe our greatest accomplishment this year has been the symposium that we hosted. The turnout was relatively small, but I think it continued to grow. We brought many presenters together in different facets of history around the Pocatello area, and we did get some, participation from community residents. We do believe that this is a great opportunity to promote the historical preservation of Pocatello and to make people aware of what's happening with our history, or what has happened with our history, and what we are trying to do to preserve it today.
I would like to touch on that as well. May is Idaho Historic Preservation and Archaeology Month, and so that's why we had it in May. And next year we thought we would just bump it up a few days so that we could tap into the students and faculty at ISU a little more and possibly get more attendees there. So that's one reason why we are doing that, but hopefully still be able to tie into the activities of HP Month. So.
Good. Any other comments, questions? Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
We'll move on to agenda item number 3, Human Relations Advisory Committee update. Representatives from the Human Relations Advisory Committee will discuss the committee's goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations.
Hello, Heather Buchanan. I'm the staff liaison to the HRIC committee. This is Jamar Brown. She's the chair of the committee, and I'll turn the time over to her.
Okay, I am here to present the report for the HRIC. This year on New Year's Eve, my husband and I were having a quiet evening at home because we're boring, and I was reflecting on the past year. I thought to myself how great it would be if 2016 was just a little less controversial. That wish basically went the way of my New Year's resolutions. I was just going to speak this morning, but given the extent of the content, I have decided to read. I would like to start by giving an overview of our meetings. We have continued to host guest speakers at our monthly meetings and have garnered an incredible amount of information from the amazing individuals that we have met with. The more we educate ourselves, the more beneficial we become to the community. We have had several guests that have immigrated to the U.S. and their stories are fascinating. I am pleased to announce that they love Pocatello, and I feel so fortunate to be able to call them friends, such as Aza Abufarza, who is an instructor for the ISU Intensive English Institute. She and her daughter both attended a meeting. Her experience and insight were very enlightening. It was a great point of interest to hear her 10-year-old daughter's perspective. Steve Martin from the Pride Foundation makes an annual trip to Pocatello and always stops in to address the committee. We really enjoy him and the information that he shares. Another example of our guest speakers would be representatives from the Kind Community Campaign. They join the growing category of exemplary organizations and individuals who put forth so much effort into creating a compassionate community and giving Pocatello something to be really proud of. They are worthy of accolades, admiration, and our sincerest gratitude. They do not deserve to be maligned on community access television programs, and neither do any of you. We need to hold Pocatello to a higher standard. We are better than that. We have a naturally established outreach program. Every member of our committee is vested in the community, not just by being members of the HRAC, but by their participation in other groups and events. We set aside time on our agenda to hear reports on the activities of these organizations. For instance, conversations on race, privilege, and allies, hosted by Too Great for Hate and the NAACP, as well as all of the NAACP events. The Parliament of World Religions that was held in Salt Lake City. We had an attendee, Virginia, thank you. The Fair Housing Workshop, the Frank Church Symposium. I can literally go on and on here. We watched TED Talks and other educational and inspirational videos, and I highly recommend them. We then address the current challenges that the community faces and what steps we can take to address these issues. We end the meeting with an educational moment, which is generally a story about somebody's personal experience that we have either found online or through social media. We close with a daily thought. A very important thing that we do is select a recipient for the Human and Civil Rights Award for the City of Pocatello. This year's recipient was Jennifer Seach. It was presented at the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. I want to thank Billy Johnson for the nomination of such a deserving individual, as well as for the fun presentation. If you were not in attendance, you missed it. To quote Billy, in everything that she does, Jennifer is a contributor, an example to young and old, and an unwavering force for kindness, compassion, and human rights. Her acceptance of others transcends age, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, political affiliation, religion, or any other attribute that may divide us. Jennifer is my hero. They both are. Billy really is Wonder Woman. Billy is an award recipient herself, as is Councilman Bray. I would like to publicly thank Maury Lee and Cable One for sponsoring the award every year. His generosity enables us to present beautiful awards. The State Attorney General and her associates have played a predominant role in addressing any and all conflicts in Pocatello. She conducted the Pocatello Law Enforcement Community Trust meeting, which I found to be very productive. She held a press conference at the courthouse and met with students at Idaho State University, along with U.S. Marshal Brian Underwood. They are both Pocatello natives. Some of us attended the Human and Civil Rights Information and Sharing meeting, sponsored by the Office of the State Attorney General. Once again, this year, the conversation seemed to be dominated by the current pulse in the nation regarding law enforcement, due to the recent and reoccurring conflict between law enforcement, U.S. citizens, as well as non-citizens residing in the United States. The Chief of Police has been very proactive in reaching out to the community due to these incidents. In addition to Pocatello Law Enforcement Community Trust meeting, a Pocatello Law Enforcement LGBT Community Trust meeting was held at ISU. I would like to commend the courageous souls who were willing to share their experiences during this meeting. Our transgender citizens have a real fear of using public restrooms. They are afraid of acts of violence against them. I, personally, cannot imagine having to plan my entire day around where I feel comfortable using a public restroom. That would just not work for me. You are all married. You understand what I'm saying. I used to go home from work on my lunch to let my dogs out. A human being should not have to go home just to use the loo. It was then revealed that the chief has attended a conference to enable him to have a greater understanding of the obstacles that these individuals face. We would like to see that knowledge become part of the Pocatello Police Department training program, their curriculum. Dispatchers do not ask a caller if they are transgender or a person of color or if they are Muslim. Our officers need to have an effective training to ensure that they can respond to any situation accordingly. We would like to suggest that the City of Pocatello reinstate the Pocatello Police Department Advisory Committee to open a line of communication between the community and law enforcement to be able to assess both parties' needs. The Pocatello Police are not just law enforcement officers. They are our friends, family members, and neighbors. My cul-de-sac has the privilege of having our own neighborhood watchman. I sleep better at night knowing that he will really notice anything that is not quite right. Chief Marchand was also present at the community meeting held at the mosque. This was a result of a national news article on Pocatello that did not paint our city in a very favorable light in reference to our international student population. I not only appreciated his response to the members of the ISSI, but I am delighted by your comments, Mayor Blad. You really stepped it up. The community's response to the article was extraordinary. ISU sponsored a support rally that was very well attended, followed later on by a community gathering. Our international students face many challenges when they arrive in Pocatello. They do not have much cultural knowledge either of the United States or of Pocatello. The university does provide some orientation, but I am of the opinion that it should be revised. Jesse Caboclo is the ISU Immigration Advisor and Director of Immigration Program Services. He advised us that his department is effective but understaffed. The committee would like to suggest that the city become involved. I have spoken with Chief Marchand about this, and he would be supportive of such an effort. As would we, as would the mosque, as would a lot of organizations here in town. The students are unaware not only of our laws, but what is acceptable behavior in our culture. It isn't just about the rental agreement or traffic laws. Not only is littering not part of the beautification process, it is illegal. You tip your pizza delivery person. This is where you can, and this is where you cannot smoke. You need to lock your doors. Bias incidents need to be reported to the police. Our goal is to prevent bias incidents from escalating into hate crimes and violent acts. We also want to learn about their culture and behavioral practices as well. I am not a fan of the social faux pas. It has always been my intent to be respectful. I need to understand what is acceptable and what is not. As an example of being uninformed in a foreign country, it would have been extremely helpful to me if I had been advised that I needed to provide my own toilet paper while visiting Panama. That would have been good information to have. After the tragic events in Orlando, the community came through once again with a memorial service held at Caldwell Park. Pocatello is ranked second best in the state of Idaho when it comes to LGBT equality, according to a report released by the Human Rights Campaign. It is because of the exceptional individuals and organizations in Pocatello that all of these events were held. In the coming months, we look forward to continuing our work that is already underway, as well as addressing other issues such as the relationships between cities, counties, and tribes. There are 562 tribes recognized by the federal government. It would seem to me that out there a successful model exists. I am speaking just to bias and stereotypes on both sides and how detrimental it is when trying to establish our harmonious environment. We have an established senior citizens facility. Ageism exists, and I'm sure it exists here in Pocatello. The stigma of substance abuse that has affected our community recently. Anyone can be an addict. These are just a few topics that we would like to touch on. Just when I think that we are going to run out of subject matter, something new presents itself. I would like to acknowledge the HRAC members. They are a fantastic group of intelligent, insightful, and caring individuals. Each one brings a diverse and often colorful perception to the table. We have, if you will be recognized, Virginia, Susie, Virgie, and then Terry over here. I would like to close with one of my thoughts for the day, just as I close all of our meetings. To quote a statement made by President George W. Bush, presented at the Dallas Memorial Service for our fallen officers. Too often, we judge other groups by their worst example, while judging ourselves by our best intentions. I am grateful for this opportunity to serve. It is my hope that I am able to live up to my best intentions. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, questions?
Are we making progress?
We're making amazing progress. We're making amazing progress. I think that when you look at the national scale of things and you look where we are in Pocatello, I think we're extraordinary. You know, I have all these different statistics that I read, you know, being the second best in the state here and some of the different things that are going on. To have a community meeting at the mosque, that's progress. And anytime something arises, the community steps up. And it's happened, unfortunately, several times in these past few months. But we have community members that they rally. And a lot of them are sitting in this room. And a lot of them are sitting right there. And I'm very grateful for that. I think we're making tremendous progress. I'm proud of our community. That doesn't mean that we don't have issues that we still need to face.
One more thing, Jamar. Relationship with the police and sheriff, how do we rate? How are we doing?
I'm extremely impressed with our chief of police. I think he has really stepped up, even from 4 years ago when I first started working with him. In my opinion, he is really putting forth the effort to understand what is going on within the community and the different, categorizes that we come up with. Unfortunately, that still happens. People still have a tendency to compartmentalize people, and that is an area that, we definitely need to make improvement on. But he's been very aware of all of these things. He was at the mosque. He was at Caldwell Park. He was at all these places. Anytime I have a question for him, I have an answer. And we did have the discussion about, what we can do as far as our international student base, because it's a real issue.
Thank you.
Council President.
Have you had discussions on how to balance the First Amendment?
We've had a lot of discussions about that. Pretty much every month we have a discussion about that.
And have you come up with a solution?
We're still working on solutions. We are still working on solutions, but it is a work in progress. We understand. I think we all consider ourselves to be supporters of the Constitution. I certainly am. There's no question about that. But I also see some real harm that's being done within the community. And I don't ever think it's a great idea. You can get out there, you can go out and say whatever you want. You can go on YouTube and you can say whatever you want. I personally have an objection to using community access to do that. That's my personal opinion.
Right. Well, and I think as people, we need to be more willing to step up and say something about the things that you hear you don't like. I found that when you're in a group of people and someone says something that you know is out of line, you know is wrong, and it's 50 years backwards, we have a tendency to not say anything about that, because it's confrontational. And
Right.
I think we have to learn to call it what it is right then, and then most people are pretty responsive to that.
Well, you'll find that with bullying.
Right.
In any circumstance, even like in schools, when a child is being bullied, the other children are afraid to say something even though they know it's wrong. They're afraid. They're afraid to step up and say something about it. And you find that repeatedly.
Yeah.
You find that in the workforce.
Sure.
You find it in the workforce. You find it within the community. But, I would agree. I mean, yes, of course we support the Constitution. There's absolutely no question about that. But where do you draw the line?
Other comments? Jamar, thank you.
Okay, thank
We
you.
appreciate all the work the committee does. It's incredible to see.
Well, and we appreciate everything that you do. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, Flag Design and Ad Hoc Committee Update. Representatives from the Flag Design Ad Hoc Committee will discuss the committee's progress and goals. The committee's next steps will be to request submission from the public regarding the new flag for the city of Pocatello. We need to extend that table out, huh?
All right.
Scoot up to the...
Well, they just want a lot of personal space up there. Just have them get cozier.
Scoot over, Preston.
There you go. Now you look like you belong.
Should have brought the whole crew.
Well, there you go.
All 16? Flying us up.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor and Council Logan McDougall, Public Information Officer, Video Services Director, and in this instance, Chairman of the Flag Design Ad Hoc Committee, and I'll have each of the committee members who are present introduce themselves.
Let it scan. It'll get.
It'll do
It just
it.
takes a minute.
Yeah. That's what I think about, so go ahead and introduce.
Yeah. My name is Casey Bjorkia, and I'm a member of the community. I work for the State Department of Education, and I'm excited to be a part of this project that will help unify our community.
I'm Presley Brown, also a member, obviously, and I'm a graphic designer at Stewart's Media Group and at the Small Business Development Center at ISU.
I'm Matt Bloxham, a local healthcare administrator, also a member of the committee. And then with that, we will get started.
That's not the flag, is it?
Audio. There should be some audio for this.
Worst city flag in there.
Publicity, baby. And he's good, right?
No, it's
Somebody out there.
anyways, well, I will just repeat what Roman said there. The words that cut like a knife. And he says, and finally, when we are all done, we can do something about Pocatello, Idaho, considered by the North American Vexillological Association as the worst city flag in North America. With more than 3 million total views, that TED Talks video featuring Roman Mars dinged Pocatello's image over something most of us weren't even aware existed, our city's flag. It also provided us with an opportunity to go from worst to first with a new graphical image for our city and acquire a lot of positive national publicity in the process. Our job as the Flag Design Ad Hoc Committee is a simple one. It's to facilitate a community-wide discussion on design and the selection of a new graphical image for Pocatello, an image that is beautiful, meaningful, and representative of our shared ideals. So we'll tell you about our effort. In March of 2015, in a TED Talks on the importance of design in city flags, Roman Mars, the host of several radio programs, including 99% Invisible, discussed the most important elements of flag design, and they include 1, keeping a flag simple, so simple that a child can draw it from memory. Use meaningful symbolism, use 2 or 3 basic colors, no lettering or seals. If you need to write the name of what your symbols express, then your symbolism has failed. And lastly, be distinctive.
Mars argued that flags are a banner around which people can have a significant amount of civic pride. He said that flags are an open source, publicly owned design language of the community. When they are done well, they are remixable, adaptable, and powerful. We can control the branding and graphical imagery of our cities with a good flag. A great city flag is something that represents the city to its people and its people to the world. And when the flag is a beautiful thing, that connection is a beautiful thing. That is what we're seeking to do, is to establish that connection. Mars critiqued other American city flags, saying that good design elements are rarely found. You can see over here there's a seal on that flag. Seals are meant for paper. They're not meant for flags. You can't see all of those detailed images in the seal. And that looks essentially like a bed sheet with a seal on it. That's what he calls those flags. He's critiqued many flags, including San Francisco, Milwaukee, and Cedar Rapids during this presentation. And last but not least, he revealed Pocatello's flag, which represents our community in that presentation.
I want to know who's in number 2 worst. Who's going to become number 1 once you fix it?
I believe it would be Washington, D.C.
Really? Well, and the great thing about being the worst is that this gives us an opportunity to make a substantial change and to turn this into a really great story. Flags, whether they're nation, state, or city, are significant symbols and that can be both beautiful and strong representations of our community.
A flag is vital to a group's identity or image of itself, as well as its values, or, to use a term in advertising and marketing, the brand it communicates to the outside world. Emil Durkheim, the famous sociologist, said that flags become connected with meaning that represents a group's values. Some people say that there are more important things for a city to do than to worry about a flag. Mars quoted one designer who said, "If you had a great city flag, you would have a banner for people to rally under to face those important things." There's a hard social science evidence to verify the importance of flags and other graphics such as logos and crests to people's feelings and values. An article in Journal of Personality and Social Psychology verifies that groups that have a flag, symbol, or logo experience increased feelings of groupness, togetherness, and cohesiveness. Because national, state, or city flags are designed to represent core values, they tend to lead people to act consistently with those values. There's no better illustration of this than the article in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. The authors argued that one of the most potent values represented by the American flag include the belief that all people should be treated equally and people should advance themselves based on their own merit. Thus, egalitarianism is one of the most important values of America, and the American flag is a visual representation of this value. The author assumed that the sight of the American flag should activate and remind people of these values. In the study, highly nationalistic people expressed less hostility towards Arab peoples than when they completed a questionnaire in the presence of an American flag on the wall than those nationalistic people who completed the questionnaire without a flag present. The symbol of the American flag is deeply connected with the psychological images of egalitarianism, and the sight of that flag evokes those egalitarian values in the minds of its citizens. Now that we know about the power of graphical images, especially flags, let's talk about the Pocatello flag.
The city of Pocatello desperately needs a new flag. One, the current city flag was never designed to be a flag. It was designed for the Chamber of Commerce to be used as a logo. As sometimes happens with these things, that logo made its way onto a flag, our version of the seal on a bedsheet, and was raised over City Hall as the city's flag in 2001. Roman Mars, along with more than 3 million people who now know we have the worst flag in the nation, have presented us with an opportunity to go from worst to first by creating a beautiful symbol of our community's values and generate a lot of positive local and national publicity in the process. Earlier this year, 2 people independently approached Mayor Blad with proposals to change Pocatello's flag. Casey Bjorkia, a local citizen, asked the mayor to put together a committee to design a new flag. Candy Turley Ames, Dean of ISU's College of Arts and Letters, acting on an idea from the Communication, Media, and Persuasion Department, asked if several departments in her college could present some design ideas to the City Council. At about the same time, Arlo Luke approached the mayor and suggested contest competitions, including participation from Roman Mars himself, to engage the entire community in designing a new flag. Mr. Luke's ideas became the foundation for the formation of the Flag Design Ad Hoc Committee. In May of 2016, that committee, including broad representation from across the community, met for the first time in the City Council chambers. Roman Mars himself flew to Pocatello to attend that meeting, encourage the group's efforts, and provide advice about how ideal flag redesign efforts tend to proceed. Mr. Mars emphasized the importance of discussion, participation, and buy-in from the community. The Flag Design Ad Hoc Committee is doing everything it can to follow that advice. Our stated goal is to go from worst to first in our flag design while attempting to both educate and engage the public in discussion about flags, encouraging the community to contribute designs, and facilitating discussion regarding the selection of the flag design we will eventually present to you, the mayor, and the City Council.
You can't tell we've done a lot of research. We've been very intentional following different cities' protocols for how they've changed their flags. We have developed a 3-step process here for how we're going to submit our flag. And the first step for that is public education and information. A series of op pieces have been submitted to appear in the Idaho State Journal. I hope you've read some of these. They're fantastic so far. They include the importance of design in everyday life, the significance of graphic imagery in communities, and what makes a good flag design, and even great flags of the United States. These are going to be published throughout the summer in an effort to prepare our community to submit their own designs. Step 2 is submission. We have prepared entry forms, rules, and processes so that community members may submit their designs for the flag, which will include the design itself and a brief iconography explanation for the meaning of various design elements in their flag. So then the representation piece is so important. There will be a call for new designs in the newspaper, the city's social media, and television news broadcasts, as well as presentations to various groups like the Rotary Clubs, chamber meetings, school districts, and other groups. A curriculum is being prepared for school teachers to use so that they can encourage students to create and submit designs. ISU students have even been invited to participate in this, in the art, communication, and marketing, and other areas. We are seeking to broadcast possible participation in the solicitation of designs, and while we're working with community members, we're also reaching out broadly with our press releases for the national media who covered our worst flag design, and we want to reestablish that worst to first communication instead. This is a great opportunity to bring positive views back to Pocatello. Third and final step is selection. The Flag Design Committee has relied heavily on local and national experts in vexillology, including Roman Mars, and will narrow down selections to a manageable number. And then what we'll do with those selections, we'll display them in newspapers and on the social media sites on the city for communication and discussion. Then we'll have non-binding ratings and rankings to be conducted to understand the community's perceptions and meanings for different design. Again, we're going to rely really heavily on that final selection from Roman Mars and other professionals to help us select the best possible design. We'll eventually submit that for your review, and we're confident it's going to be a great design, something that we're all excited about. If you do not select it, then we'll move back in the process and another committee would work forward on submitting another design.
Flags are vital to group identity and community branding. By involving the community in education design, submission, and selection of the new flag, the Flag Design Committee seeks to clarify the values and identities we hold close and select a beautiful flag that reinforces those identities and communicates a new sense of branding identity to those outside the community. Finally, we hope to raise the community's awareness of the importance of art and design in areas of our community, triggering discussions of design when we talk about our parks, transportation systems, and our neighborhoods, and perhaps even transforming Pocatello into the foremost center of design for the Intermountain West. Thank you.
That's pretty lofty.
Are there any questions?
I have one. Did any of you have any idea how involved a flag would be and how much information is out there about the right kind of flag?
Personally, no. I've mentioned it before, but of the things I would think I would know in my life, flag design would not be one of them. But it has been a very interesting process learning about, like they say, and Roman says, and other experts say, how a flag is a representation that, and all the things that go with it, spoken, unspoken, especially that psychology study that mentions how the American flag, just the sight of it, triggers different emotions. So a flag is very, very important and a beautiful thing for a community, states, nations.
How many cities actually have flags versus how many cities don't have flags?
I'm not sure on the exact number. I think in the study where they ranked flags in North America, the total number was in the 200s.
So out of 10,000 cities, there's 200 flags that are being ranked. So even having the worst flag might be better than not having one.
I would argue the announcement that we have the worst is probably. If you look at places like Chicago, police officers for their funerals, rather than drape an American flag over their coffin, they put the Chicago flag over their coffin. The flag can be a huge and beautiful symbol for people and just holds so much meaning. Roman, when he was here, he mentioned when you see a teenager walking down the street in 2 years with the flag tattooed on their arm, that is when you'll know you have succeeded.
Okay, we're going to hold you guys for that.
I'll get one just to make
not
sure.
the teenager.
We're doing it as a committee at the end. Not really.
So what's the time frame? When do you think this will all be done?
We hope to have a new flag flying over City Hall by spring of next year. So right now is kind of the soft rollout of our plans. We're going to be meeting with Rotary clubs, different organizations, presenting this to them to let them know what we're doing. In the fall, we're going to hopefully engage the school district and also Idaho State, and that's when the hard rollout will be. That's when we're okay. We want everything. We want it now. And then into the winter time, we'll judge the designs, we'll get that feedback, present it back to the community, and then hopefully by spring next year, we have a final design, whether that's one flag that got submitted that was just perfect, or a combination of a couple of different elements from a few different flags.
We've followed a lot of other cities' protocols, how it's been successful, how it hasn't been successful. So we've tried to model our efforts on what other communities have done with changing their flags so that we're not just reinventing the wheel, we're trying to use best practices. I know this doesn't happen often, so it's not a lot of best practice to follow, but we're doing our best to do that.
So you're still in the education process?
Yes, yeah, in our 3-step, it's right in the education process, just beginning it. You guys are the first.
Well, thank you for your services. I bet it's interesting.
What I think is kind of neat about this, we've got national attention because we're the worst, but now we have national attention because we formed a committee to change that worst ranking to first ranking. Roland Mars spent time to come here, do that. CBS Morning News, Mo Roca came to do a segment 2, and so just from the action that we've been doing, little town in southeast Idaho is getting quite a bit of national recognition for it. And so thank you very much. It's exciting to me. I never thought it would be that exciting, but it's exciting to me to see how things are working. So thank you.
Yeah, now if you could just teach them how to pronounce Pocatello.
No way.
It won't happen.
Will you be scheduling these presentations, Logan?
Yeah. I've reached out to Rotaries, the Chamber.
To all the Rotaries? I can handle Gate City Rotary.
I actually just scheduled with them they will be there August 2nd. So any organizations, please feel free to give them my number, my email address. We'd love to be out there and show them why Pocatello needs a new flag and what we're doing about it.
Perfect.
With that, we'd actually like to give you the first entry forms. So if you've got your ideas for a flag, please feel free to scribble them on this.
Don't bother.
Do we have to put our name on it?
Don't bother.
Yes, we want a name. We want a name.
I'll give you one and I'll put Jim's name on it.
Jim will have 7 different...
Name, address, email, phone number, age, or if you're a professional designer, if you want to venture into the world of the pros, you do need to submit that information.
And is this application available where?
We have it here. We've got paper copies. Our website is also live now. It's going to get a couple of minor changes, but flag.pocatello.us. This is an interactive document on there. You can go on there and submit your design, fill this essentially all the way out and submit it online. You can submit it by email. We're taking designs any way people want to bring them in. Scribble it on a napkin, whatever they've drawn it on. We'll take it as long as it is 3 inches by 5 inches. We'll take it.
Is there a prize for the winner of the flag that's selected?
The honor of being the designer of Pocatello's flag. So now, considering there's 200 and some in the nation, if you're one of the people who designed a flag, it's
a great resume builder.
Exactly.
If it gets rated well.
That's right, if it gets rated well.
Cool, thanks.
Super, we'll take those entry forms.
I thought the flag with the question mark was the flag.
Thank you.
If it would be helpful, we could get a prize.
Well, thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, proposed city employee time and attendance software. Chris Sorensen, Chief Information Officer, will be present to discuss proposed software to track city employee time and attendance. ExecuTime is the preferred provider for the time and attendance scheduling software for SunGuard, the city's current provider. The proposed software includes electronic timekeeping and scheduling capabilities, and that the city currently uses paper timesheets to accomplish. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Councilman. Chris Sorensen, CIO for the City of Pocatello. Give our IT department a second here to catch up with the rest of us. Okay. Just a brief explanation of what we're going to do here today. We're going to give you a 20,000-foot overview of what ExecuTime can provide for the city as a tool for time and attendance tracking, as well as advanced scheduling for our public safety departments. On today's agenda, we're going to look a little bit about the way the city does it today. We're going to talk about the time and attendance tool as well as the advanced scheduling tool. We have received a first quote from ExecuTime. It's a very rough quote because we don't have our complete requirements determined at this time, as well as a return on investment using a spreadsheet to help you kind of understand what we believe we might be able to recoup from using these tools. And then we'll have a question and answer session. Remember, too, that a lot of what will come down will be based on policies and procedures that have yet to be developed as to how we'll actually implement this and what we will require of people and how they utilize it to better serve the public here. So what's our current process? Well, there's a lot of paper involved, and there's a lot of clocks. We have payroll clerks in every department who are constantly going after everybody every 2 weeks to get their time and attendance sheet. Rarely does Ruth get mine without coming in and begging me to give it to her. And of course, we do get some complaints about how these payroll clerks remind people about the timesheets. But in reality, how do we do it? Start with IT prints between 600 and 900 paper timesheets every 2 weeks. We then separate them out by department and distribute them to the department pay clerks. Quantity does depend on season. Of course, summertime, we print out a whole lot more timesheets than we do in the wintertime. The payroll clerks then distribute those timesheets to their employees. Employees will fill them out and sign the timesheets. For those that have to put different project codes and things in, they have to break those codes out. You have to figure out what your time was spent doing. If you were on sick leave, if you were on annual leave, if you were on travel, training, anything like that has to be put in. Once the employee completes it, they submit it to their supervisors, who are supposed to review them, approve them, and sign them. We are kidding ourselves if we think that department heads or supervisors that have 50 and 60 people go through these thoroughly every time they sign them. I only have 5 people, and once or twice I have actually accidentally signed my own timesheet because I look at the numbers and they're all there, and I sign it and realize I just signed not only as myself but as my supervisor. Thank goodness for whiteout. The payroll clerks then gather those up and they enter all those numbers back into the SunGuard system, copying from those timesheets and then putting them into this page. The timesheets are then sent to HR, who reviews them. They make sure that all the signatures are there, all the codes are proper, and that the hours add up appropriately. If a timesheet is unsigned or if there is an error on the timesheet that they notice, they have to send those back to the departments for signatures. And once those are completed a second time, HR has to review them again to make sure they are complete. Those timesheets are then scanned and maintained electronically. Hard copy is stored and later destroyed according to records management policy here in the city. So, what can we do to make that better? You have ExecuTime software. ExecuTime is a preferred provider by SunGuard. SunGuard is our system that we manage our payroll system in. ExecuTime provides workforce management solutions to primarily benefit local governments. That's who they focus on, and that's who they work with primarily. We have this ERP system that helps us to manage the city. The ERP system is your enterprise resource planning tool. It does all of our accounting. It does everything else that you see up there, engineering, planning. Virtually everything we do in the city is maintained in some element of the SunGuard system. So why do we need to go to the new system? Well, there's several reasons. Mainly, we're looking for a better way of doing it. I was surprised, as many of you and others, when you got hired on by the city to find out that we were using a paper system to do time card management. Want to increase our accountability. We know there are errors in the system, whether they are intentional or incidental, that they occur. So you want to fix and improve your accountability. And it's just a recommended thing to do. As you go out and about, again, very few people use paper anymore to maintain timekeeping.
Thank goodness our timesheets we're using now don't have our flag on them.
That is true. Then we would be the worst in the nation. So what are the requirements of a system to improve things? To start with, you got to interface with your existing payroll system. You got to have something that will work with our SunGuard system and allow the data to flow between the two systems. You're looking for a single system. You don't want to deploy multiple systems throughout the city. You don't want different departments having different tools trying to accomplish. And you want something that can either be done in the cloud or on-premise or in-house. Right now, the solution we're looking at is an in-house system. We could put it in the cloud, but the annual costs within about 4 or 5 years would become more expensive than doing it in-house. Our upfront costs are much higher when we do it in-house, but then the annual maintenance over time becomes less. So we have multiple solutions. We have time and attendance, and we have scheduling. These are two different pieces that we're going to look at. Primarily the timekeeping piece. Timekeeping is where you account for your hours, you do your accruals for your leaves and such. But on the scheduling side, when you have departments like the fire department and police department who have to make sure they have all their shifts covered, you have all the different skill sets covered, it's a very complex process, and executive time offers both tools. Again, time and attendance is for everybody. Everybody in the city would be part of this project and would start using it for the time and attendance. The scheduling side, again, would only be used for mostly the public safety, police and fire department. We have not discussed this much with the police. We have had discussions with the fire department as to the benefits that this would bring. So this is what it kind of looks at graphically. You have this time and attendance tool. The items down at the bottom are how you get the data into your time and attendance tool. Then you want to interface with your payroll system. You want to make sure that it has your general ledger codes in it, your project codes, any grants, anything that you have to track by hour can be tracked in this system. Your human resources department needs to have interface with it. They need to be able to enter new employees. They need to be able to take old employees out. They need to be able to get their temporary, their seasonal employees back and forth. Status changes, pay raises. You need to be able to look at leave balances, and those items need to all be in the system. And again, on the bottom, you have to have a way to put it in, and we will discuss some of the ways that Executive Time provides the tools. You have this advanced scheduling piece also that will interact with the time and attendance, and again, different ways to input into that tool. And it will interface with the records management system as well as the computer-aided dispatch tools that your public safety departments utilize. Again, you want it to work with your payroll system, you want it to work with your HR system. Employee data, employee accruals all need to get into executive time, and we will make sure that happens. We will work with HR to make that happen. And then, of course, as employees enter their time, they continue with their vacation accruals, counts, projects, job allocations, all go back into the system and are tracked back through our SunGuard system. So we're looking for that complete solution. We want something that is web-based, but also mobile access, has mobile access capabilities. We want something that will offer both the time and attendance as well as the scheduling all in one system. Again, we want to make sure we have those options of either premise or cloud, but again, we are leaning toward the premise system, which is in-house. And you want to have various ways to collect and manage the employee's time. And we will discuss the various tools. Again, you want to have it web-based or mobile access. You want to be able to get your unique business rules in for your various departments, your bargaining units, your memorandums of understanding that may exist. You want to be able to input various work schedules. Some of us work a straight 40-hour week. Fire department, police department, people work different shifts, different schedules. You want to be able to handle all those different schedules. And you want to make sure it incorporates the Federal Labor and Standards Act rules that are out there, that we're not violating any of those rules. And you want it to do everything else you want it to do. So let's look at the time and attendance specifically. You want to be able to capture the data, you want to manage the data, and then you want to integrate it with your existing systems. So how are you going to do it? The primary way to get into the executive time system is through a web-based tool, through a web browser. You want to be, it's going to populate this timesheet every pay period for you. Kind of zoom in on it a little bit. The employee will log in. We can have the interface with our current system, so you don't have to have a different login. We'll use our Active Directory for a login. So the same login that the individual uses to log into their email or their city account, it'll be the same login, same username, same password. The pay period, you will be able to address what pay period you're looking at, and then the data will populate. There are various ways to capture this time. They will interact with time clocks if you so desire or not. There is a mobile tool that will allow you to get into the system via either a smartphone, a tablet, or some other type of mobile device, should we decide to allow that. There is actually ways that you can go in connected to your telephone system and have people call in and sign into the system. It will all depend on the rules that we want to implement and the policies that we want to put in place as to which tools we make available. The nice thing about the mobile access, one of the things that they will be coming out with prior to our implementation is a geofencing capability. In other words, when you sign in using your smartphone, the data will also be collected as to where you were at when you logged in. So that if you're out on the third tee of the golf course, teeing off, and you decide, oh, I should be at work, and you sign in.
Look at Gary when you say that, not at me. I don't know, he was looking right at me when he said that.
I would be thinking about my time.
That's true.
Or if you're at breakfast or if you're in the shower. Now, it's not going to say you were in the shower, but it will say where you were.
You need to look at Gary's phone.
So that is a capability that is coming. If you're using the advanced scheduling tool, such as the fire department, there are ways where it can take the scheduled hours and actually put those straight into the timekeeping. So that if we're paying an employee based on scheduled hours, which I believe we do in some instances, then it would automatically go into the system as such. So there's that interface between the two. It'll even take spreadsheet data and put it straight into it if you choose to go that way. There's a little more of a view as to what it looks like as it populates. Again, you can see the project codes, grants are listed. If you have an error, if a supervisor is completing and doing the approval process, and they see that little asterisk in the red box, it will say, look, one of your business rules has been violated. You need to check this and make sure that it's correct, or you need to fix it. Again, we're not going to get too deep into this. Again, you can put your projects in there, the little red boxes. Comp time hours. If a person puts in overtime, it will allow them to choose whether it goes to overtime or comp time. More of a close-up view as to what it looks like. So after it's been captured, you need to manage the data. You can do job costing and tracking. It will do rounding, deductions, shift differentials. Again, it will make sure the FSLA overtime rules are all implemented. You can manage your leave requests through this. You can do electronic approvals. Right now, if you were to ask every department head, there's probably a different process for every department head, how they approve leave requests and how those are tracked and maintained. This system will allow the employee to go right into the system, say, I want to take leave on this day. It will actually interface with a calendar that will tell that individual how many people are already on leave during that time frame. The supervisor will be able to see it. Notifications will go to supervisors via either text message or email messages, and then it will allow the supervisor to electronically approve those leave requests. It can be used as a scheduling tool. Again, reporting, it maintains complete audit logs. Every time anybody enters something into the system, it will tell us who entered that, so that if anybody is trying to manipulate data that isn't authorized to, we'll be able to see it in the logs. Again, after it's been captured and managed, the approvals will go through. And again, this comes down to the business rules and processes that we put in place as to who will be authorized to approve the timesheet after it's been completed. The approvals can be done just the same way as the people putting in the data and the information. If they choose to do it remotely, they can do it remotely. They can do it through time clocks. They can do it through the web browser. They can go in, they can address all the different things, they can approve it. Again, when they pull it up, it will notify them if there are things that need to be addressed before the approval is completed. It'll show accruals. It'll show that if you used leave, if you used sick leave, if you used annual leave, and those kind of things. Once you're done, you can lock it up, you can move it to the payroll system, and it will process and the payroll will be made. And your paycheck hopefully will end up in your account as you normally would. Okay, just briefly, the advanced scheduling tool. Again, you're going to create, you're going to manage, and you want to communicate. This is kind of how most people do schedules today. They just have some glorified spreadsheet, and they try to track individuals, their skill sets. the hours they're going to work, the shifts that they're on, and they're going to make sure they're covered. Just like the timekeeping piece, executive time offers the tools that are necessary to take care of this for us. They will enter the individuals, they will enter their certifications, their qualification, and the rules for each shift. And as they build those shifts, it will populate into a calendar that will provide a graphical interface that will make it more easy to understand who you have scheduled and what they are doing. It allows you to create these shifts. It allows you to apply your complex rotation patterns, build up your templates, create positions. It'll allow you to validate those expirations. You can track when those certifications expire. If you have work limit thresholds, X number of hours that you have to work or the time you have to have off, all these things are available through the scheduling tool. Supervisors and individuals, again, will be able to access and manage the tools either through a web browser or through the other tools that are previously discussed. Notifications can go out via either text or email to supervisors, and mobile connections are available. So again, the workforce management tools that can be improved upon are the time and attendance and the scheduling pieces that are available. Executive Time will offer us the flexibility and security for handling and managing our systems, and it will integrate those systems together. Okay, so what's our initial quotes? Again, that's a 20,000-foot view of what Executive Time does. Our initial quote is for installation $77,875 with an annual maintenance fee of about $11,500. And that maintenance will start at year zero. So when we sign it and we implement it, from day zero, you start paying maintenance. That's a standard process for SunGuard as well as most software tools that are out there that do these type of things. That looks like a lot of money. However, let's look at the potential return on investment. Now, I caution you that some of these numbers are quite large. We have used the American Payroll Association's recommended numbers. I went conservative on all of these numbers. If there was a range of 1% to 8%, I chose 1%. So I always took the most conservative numbers in working this return on investment. This is also using our setup with our employees kind of as an average across the entire year. So if you look at this, under the first block up there on the left, payroll processing annual savings, using the number of 569 hourly employees, because exempt employees and our employees are affected differently when you look at this return on investment. So using a number of 569 and using an average of 3 minutes to process each pay sheet at 26 time cards per year, that would save 740 hours of manpower. Using an average hourly rate of $21.44 for personnel that prepare payroll. In that block, we're showing almost a $16,000 a year savings. Human error savings. This is the one that I think you could, it's a large number, but if you throw it out, we still see a big return on investment. Our current payroll is approximately $27 million a year. And if you correct 1% error, that would be a $270,000 a year savings. Again, this is one that the Payroll Association says that there are errors that on average are between 1% and 8% nationwide. And again, we took the most conservative. You can see how big that number would be if you picked one of the bigger numbers. So if we were able to clean up just an error rate of 1%, it would save us $270,000. The next block over there to the right, minutes lost per day per employee. It says there the Payroll Association estimates that approximately 5 minutes per employee per day is lost due to tardiness, early departures, and long breaks. And this can track. I put in 1 minute, just correcting us for 1 minute versus the average of 5. For total employees, 737. Total hours per year, 2,800 plus. Average employee pay rate was $18.41. And I've actually cut off what that total savings is. But it was in the thousands. Okay, paperwork annual reduction. Annual paper costs, to print out all those, we figure cost of about $800. For the timesheets themselves, managing them, $400 for all the paper for those offices that use paper for time off requests, vacation requests. So we calculate about just $1,200 annual savings on paper alone. Transferring the paper, every payroll clerk has to take that paper and transfer it into our existing system. We figure about 2 minutes per person. Total time spent just transferring the data is about 639 hours per year. So paperwork annual reduction costs were almost $13,000. Bottom line, using this spreadsheet, it shows an annual return of over $350,000 to the city. Are those going to be hard savings? No. Are you going to be able to prove those savings? No. But those are soft savings that are believed to be accomplished by using them.
They're productivity savings.
They're productivity, and they're very hard to document. But other than that, gentlemen, questions? And again, the devil's in the details, and we don't have the details. But
Gary.
If we pay for a system like that, is there going to be some kind of an expectation, or would you ask department heads in the larger departments where there's a lot of time spent on payroll, and you're going to see that significant savings, some kind of an effort on those departments to show where that time's going to go? I mean, what other things are those people going to be doing to at least show the change in the productivity?
I would hope it would free them up to do things that are more mission critical. I don't know how we would have them show that.
And the other question I have is it talks in there about tightening up time you get to work, time you leave work, and the time you take breaks. How does it accomplish that?
That's the details we don't fully understand yet. I've watched the webinar about 3 or 4 times, and they don't give them those level of details. What our plan is to do next, if you all direct us to do so, is to actually bring executive time in, have them come here, go more in depth, more in detail as to how those type of things would work.
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind it'll save a lot of time. I mean, I think that's apparent, but I think it's good to look at, that's great, but if we're going to spend $100,000, we ought to have some expectation of what that's going to do. It doesn't mean a whole lot if it saves time if we don't accomplish anything with it.
Yeah, if you don't turn that time around and utilize it for something more mission critical, then you've not accomplished anything. Sure. But it will improve accountability. I've had people come to me that are concerned. I don't know why, because it will tighten up accountability. There is some belief that in some departments it may cost more money, especially this will track call-outs a little more effectively, so that if you call somebody out and they only work for 15 minutes, the current rules are they get paid for 2 hours for that call-out. We're not always tracking that. We're not always capturing that. Sometimes that's being donated to the city, which isn't fair to the employee either. So in some ways, while it may address accountability, and then some employees may say, oh, geez, I won't be able to go golfing in the afternoon because this is going to show it, versus the other employee that's saying, I've been kind of screwed over time, and with overtime that I didn't get paid, and this will start tracking that and being more fair to the employees.
Councilman Orr?
Yes, Chris, we talked yesterday a bit, but on this estimate of cost, does that include the scheduling module?
No, it doesn't. That was strictly timekeeping and time tracking. And if the chief is here, how many hours do you spend doing your scheduling? A lot. Do you believe this would help?
Yes. Well, yeah, I just... Again, I don't want anybody to say we got surprises, because we need to know that right now the number you've given us is just for the time management part.
Very, very much so. And again, very soft numbers, but we're reflective of some potential true savings.
Do we have any idea what that number is for the scheduling component?
I don't. I haven't worked that scheduling piece.
Okay. Down here on this side, any questions?
The factor for our entry on the data side right now is pretty heavy, isn't it? I mean, we have department heads, different people that are having to approve these almost algorithm type of schedules and pay things. So I can see how the chance for error is very high.
especially when you have an individual not taking that paper and having to manually input it into a system.
Yeah, that's all of that. And then just being able to look and make sure all the inputs into that paper are right is pretty tedious.
That's true.
Is this price a little bit higher than we originally thought, or are we in line?
No, I believe from some quotes that were gathered earlier, several years ago, I think executive time has come down in cost. Now, that price actually doesn't go to executive time. The quote actually comes from SunGuard because they are a preferred provider, and executive time is actually a third party that works with SunGuard. So all of our fees, all of our payments and stuff all go back to SunGuard. If you were to ask me if I think SunGuard is overpriced, yes, I do. Do I think there's another alternative that we could go to? Not a chance.
That's why they're
not one without millions of dollars being invested. We're kind of stuck with SunGuard, and their prices go up and almost every year. This year, surprisingly, they didn't go up as much as we thought. We also found tools that we were paying for years that nobody was utilizing, and we've gone back to SunGuard and said, we're done paying for it. And so we've actually cut our costs with SunGuard to the point that additional annual cost would be covered basically on what we have eliminated over the last year and a half since I've been here for the annual cost. And I think that's true too when we go to the next stage of SunGuard, which is Naviline Edge, which is a true web-based product. I think between these two, I think I've almost captured enough savings that we won't notice a significant annual increase.
Okay. Jim, any questions?
I have one more. Chris, years ago when we went to executive time, the area that we had some difficulty was with some departments scheduled record your time based on project work. Has that been resolved so you can put that in there as how much time per day you're spending on a project?
You can take, if you work an 8-hour day and you work 2 hours on this project, you can code that in there.
Okay.
It's just a matter of us putting all the codes in and capturing all those codes, making sure they're in the system. And once they're in there, individuals will be able to track based on those different things and be able to be broke out.
Sounds great.
Finance has a comment.
Yeah, but you got to come to the table.
I think it's just smart management.
It is.
Even if it costs more than we anticipated, it's to be able to track that and know where we're at any given moment.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, the other thing should be able to point out too, if an employee wants to know how much leave they have, they either have to call somebody, talk to somebody. I know I get a copy every pay period showing the leave balances of all my people. But in this system, an individual will be able to go in from his desktop or from his phone or whatever and say, okay, I want to take vacation. How much vacation time do I have? And the system will immediately show them.
And they can also get that information from the self-serve side as well that we have, and it's up and running. The only couple comments I had was, even though you're going to have people tap in and automatically put their time in, you're still going to have review processes. So your admin support people, they may have a reduction in time, but their time's going to be converted to more accuracy and review versus entry. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. So I just want you to be aware of that. And then as far as on the project accounting and all of that, that exists within our system. We can run those reports. We have that ability. What this is going to do is be able to, it's like a time clock. We're going to now make people log in, log out, when they come on, when they go off. That's where your time, that's where your money savings is really going to come in, is in the accuracy of that. But all we have to do is take our existing project accounting system and interface it into this outside system so that they both talk to each other, and so they'll feed. But in the end, I think it's a good way to go.
Absolutely.
That was good.
It will take us a while to develop the policies, the processes, and everything. And Joyce and I talked yesterday that we will probably, once we develop those processes and policies, we'll probably bring in our auditor just to double check them and make sure that under an audit aspect that we've actually got policies and processes that
Well, we want to make sure we have our controls tight enough that he feels comfortable with the way we're processing, and that we have the reviews in place so that he can have assurance that our new procedure is going to work, and provide him assurance as to what the numbers are coming out. So
that was good.
So with the approval to move forward, When would you expect that you would start potentially having the beta testing online for?
Well, if the consensus is that we move forward with this, we will get with Executive Time, bring them in, and start discussing the way ahead and the schedule and the planning. When we do implement this, Executive Time and SunGuard have both told us that you will expect at least a 6 to 9 month period to implement it. We will implement with small departments first, most likely IT, HR, and finance, and those are the 3 components. Excuse me, I thought I had that turned off.
And be aware that in the budget, I have put in a use of reserves out of his fund to the amount of $75,000 for the purchase of the software. So that's the plan in fiscal year 17.
And it'll probably take us that long to develop our planning process and getting all the rules in place so that we can implement this appropriately when the time comes.
Well, the reason I asked that question is so we could possibly start looking at reducing some of those modifiers that you got on your pay that simplifies your information gathering for payroll.
Well, right. I mean, we're still going to have our review side, and there's some details in this that I have questions on as to how it's going to work. For instance, just to throw one out there, if I have approvers that have to approve the entry within the department, let's say Mr. Approver is not there, you have to have levels, or you have to have an override. Otherwise, you've now stopped payroll from executing. So these are the kind of details that we have to get into with Executive Time so that we know how to overcome obstacles should they arise. And so I think the planning part of this is the critical part, to make sure we're buying the parts that we need and we know how we're going to implement and address the issues. Because you've had more flexibility at this point, let's face it. Yes, they have to enter the timesheet, but there have been moments when we've had to enter timesheets Wednesday morning of payroll processing. So that will have to be tightened up. So I say the planning part's the critical.
And then we'll come back to a city council with the final contract too for final contract approval.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We'll move on to agenda item number 6, Title 16 Subdivision Ordinance Amendment. Planning staff will be in attendance to review and discuss the comprehensive rewrite of Title 16 Subdivision Ordinance. This rewrite is to update and clarify ordinance provisions in compliance with the current Idaho subdivision and survey statutes, zoning ordinance provisions, and development practices.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the council. Dave Foster, the senior planner for the city, and with me is Mike Zaglowski, Public Works Director.
You going to join the party with us? Or
What's that?
You going to join the party today? Or?
Yes, I am joining the party. I just wanted to make sure.
Set up. Okay.
As was stated, this is the presentation of the subdivision code that we've been working on for about 2 years now. We did come to the city council in a work session on March 10th of this year to kind of open the game on processing the amendment to the entire subdivision code. And subsequent to that, have gone through Planning Commission review, public hearings, work sessions over the last couple months. Taking public input and tweaking and amending the original draft to incorporate comments and issues that arose through that hearing process, which is the purpose of the hearing process. So what was sent to you was a memo kind of detailing the 6 major components. There's a lot of minor components also that have been adjusted in the code, along with a clean copy of the draft ordinance that the Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended to be forwarded to you. As was stated, this is a comprehensive rewrite of that, and I went through on the memo kind of detailing, in a very thumbnail sketch way, each of the major sections. So one of it is to understand that this is being presented as purely a subdivision code, not a development code. So it's a matter of separating the process that a subdivision plat is a survey map on how property is to be subdivided under Idaho code. It is not a development code. The development of a subdivision is governed by specific development requirements, and the city has those in place through public works as far as, the street designs and widths and things like that. So this draft separates those two items. The existing code does not, but the existing code has development requirements that are outdated and have not been used because they've been replaced by updated development standards. So again, this is purely a subdivision code. Under Idaho code, subdivision is defined as taking a piece of property and dividing it into 5 or more lots. The Idaho code also says that the cities or local jurisdictions can basically deal with things that are less than 5 lots, which 4 lots or fewer, in any really reasonable, flexible way that they deem appropriate. The existing code that we have defines a subdivision of 2 lots. In other words, you take a piece of property, split it in half, you've got 2 lots. And so it's a matter of, there's flexibility for the city for 4 lots or fewer. Once you get to 5 lots or more, Idaho code dominates on how the subdivision plat is done. Again, that's the survey map. So in this code, in our existing code, we do have that distinction. The 5-lot subdivision is what you want to label it a regular subdivision. It has to be processed according to the state code. We do incorporate subdivisions of 4 lots or fewer, what we call short plats. And we do have proposed an expedited process for properties that create 4 or fewer lots. The survey map, the plat map, still has to abide by all of the code requirements under Idaho as far as the survey monumentation and all the details. And so it's mainly our processing that we can expedite on the short plats. And so there are specific provisions to expedite that in this proposed code. Some of the kind of hot button items, it does deal with the fact again that we have eliminated specific development requirements because those are currently administered through existing public works standards, things like the stormwater management plan, the erosion sediment control requirements, clearing and grading, excavation permits. That deals with the physical development. So you won't find anything in here in the proposed code about, specifically say about hillside developments, because those things are covered under the development standards, so they won't be in the subdivision code itself. One of the main differences is with a regular plat is you get a preliminary plat that comes in and goes to Planning and Zoning Commission for review at a public meeting, and then eventually a final plat would come before the City Council for approval. The short plat process that we are proposing, because we do have flexibility under Idaho code, is to take short plats through basically administrative review at staff level, and based on that being a complete application of a short plat, it would come directly to City Council. In other words, it would skip the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting requirement. We've checked with other jurisdictions within the state, and it's handled just about every way you can think of for what these less than 5 lot subdivisions are done. So there is no standardized model to go off of. So we've taken the best of what we think of the process. We calculate time savings on short plats about 30 days by eliminating the Planning and Zoning Commission review process. And we've spelled out in this proposed code basically the very specific requirements of a short plat. In other words, trying to eliminate any conflict or subjectivity. It's a very clean, close, short process. so that the developers and staff have a very, very defined process they can run through before it would come to council. So that's an expedited process we're requiring, or proposing to require. Another one that took a lot of time and review has to do with existing provisions about posting sureties for development. Because we're proposing to separate the development from the platting process, we still need a link between the plat and the development. So we don't want to eliminate that. So we've incorporated modified provisions dealing with posting sureties to ensure development of subdivisions. And that translates also into some recording options where someone could record a plat prior to development, subject to the appropriate surety being posted for the construction, or have someone in construction getting close to wanting to sell lots, being able to record the plat and posting surety for completion of the subdivision, which is a process that exists now also.
Dave, how long does that surety last? Is that a 2-year process?
We've opened it up for that with potential extensions depending on circumstances. So yes, you start out with a time limit. I mean, we run into some things like economics sometimes, or weather. For instance, you can't get all of the paving done because the paving plant shut down in October or November. So we've tried to open that door that if you complete it to a point, we can acknowledge and have that recorded so that lots can be sold and development permits can be issued for the lots. So again, yes, a time limit, but also a flexibility on that time limit in the process.
Have we had serious challenges in our community that you can recall from developers specifically leaving the city holding the bag?
Not specifically, and I think it's because the existing code, tries to deal with that in the fact that plat is not recorded until the subdivision is developed or it's substantially complete and the proper surety has been posted prior to recording. Because under Idaho code, and its standard is you can't sell a lot that doesn't exist. The lot does not exist until the plat's recorded. And so that control mechanism is in the existing code, and it's being forwarded into this proposed code also.
Thank you.
One of the components that's tied to that is basically it is a warranty period that is spelled out very specifically in the subdivision code itself. It's implemented as part of the subdivision code and will be implemented as part of the development code. And what the purpose is to seek a 2-year warranty for the infrastructure and improvements that go into a development. The streets, the water, sewer, storm drains, catch basins, things like that. Right now, there's built in into the development agreement, but there is no actual, say, access to a bond or a surety for the city to access actual dollars if there's a problem with the warranty period. You go to the developer, say, hey, this is failing, we need you to improve this, it's at your expense, and if they don't do it, then we don't have anything physically to fall back on other than a legal process or to go fix it ourselves. So,
which happens.
It does happen. It hasn't happened significantly, fortunately, for the city. And so part of the hearing and review process, we started out with kind of a single process for warranty, and then ended up with 3 different ways of providing that warranty bonding for that 2-year period. So it was a consensus type resolution of actually, having a warranty bond posted by a surety company to being able to do a cash surety for that period, or to ones that have existing contractor's license with existing contractor's bonds, having that language in those bonds be able to cover warranty periods also. So that was a major discussion item. And like I say, we ended up with 3 different options of covering that.
If you put in a subdivision and you have a section of subdivision that hasn't been built in for 2 years, the lots they haven't started building on the lots, you may not know that there's a problem, and then the bond is gone.
The bond will be for the infrastructure that the developer is dedicating to the city. So it'll be the water lines, the sewer lines, the street, curb, gutter, sidewalk. And so that part of it is what is covered, because that's what the city has control of from that point on. And so you're right. I mean, if it sits there a long time and there's a problem, that's part of the game, I guess you'd have to say. We can only protect the things that we have responsibility for from that point forward. And so that's what the objective was, is to provide that. 2 years will get us most of the time through 2 winters, which is pretty good, because a lot of times frost heaving and things like that may be the issues. And so there's ranges anywhere from 1 year to 5 years, depending on what you see out there. We felt 2 years was reasonable. Right?
Yes.
So a couple of the other things had to do, and it was along that same line, is with subdivisions as far as how early can we issue a building permit. And typically, we kind of default to talking about residential subdivisions, but this applies to commercial or industrial also. There's not a distinction. They all can be subdivided. So there's a lot of discussion on how early we can issue a building permit, on a property. The first key always is the subdivision plat has to be recorded, because again, the lot does not exist legally until the plat's recorded. So the discussion went is how much of the improvements need to be in before we can issue a building permit. And it was determined that basically a majority of the improvements need to be into the subdivision. For instance, you have to have water, you have to have sewer. And about the only thing that was left out of being able to deal with in the future would be the paving of the street. So there's a provision proposed in here, and it's based on protocol that's been used in the past to be able to get the plat recorded, have the majority of the infrastructure in, being able to have the developer bond for, say, the paving of the street, and we would still be able to issue a building permit to someone who bought one of the lots, because there's a time limit, again, on when the pavement would have to be finished, and there's a surety posted for that incomplete part of the infrastructure, so that we'd be able to do the building permit. The current protocol had a provision about holding the CO on a house until everything was done. That's a very awkward process to try and hold the CO from a third party who bought a property and built a house, because the street wasn't paved yet. So with the fact that we'll be holding a surety for the pavement, we removed the restriction on holding a CO. If we issue a building permit trying to build the house, we should be able to follow it all the way through. When the house is done, they should get their CO to go occupy. They've got water, sewer, and the street should be done at that point. If not, then we can pull the surety and get the street done. So again, it's more to expedite the ability to actually develop the property. One of the other items it's not really tied to subdividing property, but it's a common thing that deals with existing properties and subdivided lots. There's a spelled out provision at the very back of the proposed code for property line adjustments. And that's where someone, say, has a lot next to somebody else's lot and they want or need 10 feet more to do something, that they can purchase 10 feet of property from the adjacent property owner and combine it with their ownership. So the title is property line adjustment. And the existing code has language in it that deals with being able to do this. It's kind of a catch-all type paragraph that has been implemented in different ways over the years because there's some subjectivity on what the language actually says. And so this process spells out specifically record survey is required to adjust that lot line so everybody knows where the lot line is for the change in ownership. And the deed work, which is actually the conveyance document, needs to be recorded in a way that combines, in that case, the 10 feet with one lot, and then the deed that gave the 10 feet is re-recorded to show that it no longer has that. Because, for instance, in a subdivision, it's called Lot 1, Block 2 of XYZ subdivision, and they bought 10 feet of Lot 2 in the same subdivision. The habit has been that deeds have been recorded to convey 10 feet of the property. It gets recorded in the county as a standalone deed for a 10-foot wide strip of property. The county assigns a parcel number to it for tax purposes, and yes, the other guy owns it, but it is not legally tied to his ownership. And that's created a lot of problems with people coming in and, say, having that 10-foot strip dropped because they thought they owned it, or the guy next door's deed was never changed, and it doesn't reflect that he sold 10 feet. There's also been problems with violation of setbacks for existing structures with people adjusting property lines and violating lot size requirements. We've caught on several that have come in. So this is an attempt to eliminate as many of those problems as we can, through a process. So, the bottom line is that this is not an ordinance that prevents people from developing, dividing, conveying property. So there's not any, we aren't taking anybody's property rights away from them in the process, but we are defining how that is done so we can track problems that have been arising by the fact that some of these processes have not been observed consistently within the city, and trying to deal with straightening a problem out takes 3 times as long as doing it right in the first place. So the proposal is again, the Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended approval of this. We plan on scheduling a public hearing for the council on August 4th, and that public hearing process will be open to the public. It'll be taking testimony, evidence, consideration of the platting process through that. And so with that, I think you want to touch more on the details on the surety and warranty bond on why we're doing that.
Yeah, I could. Does the mayor and council have questions with respect to the current proposal that Dave has made?
Yeah. Would you kind of review what input has come from the public so far?
Okay, we started out with a open public house and directly invited all the developers we had in our system, surveyors that dealt with these engineering companies, things like that. I think we had 3 people come, so that wasn't a big turnout. But we have
out of a potential
about 50.
Really?
But we made the effort. This has been on the city's website since the council work session in March. public hearing process itself, of course, was published and noticed, and we did get good input from the commission itself and a few developers and engineers, and that resulted in some changes. For instance, with the bonding requirements and some of the platting information. So it's been active, but it's been in a small group. But it's been an informed group, and so we got good input through the process.
Mike?
Yeah, I think we found one of those 10-foot parcels the other day when I was in your office talking about that call that came in. There was a parcel. Fortunately, the ownership was by the same person in the adjacent properties, but we were trying to, because there was a 10-foot strip that apparently had been assigned. But here, is this 30-page document that you submitted, is that the entire rewrite?
Yes.
Okay. Always the question I have when I hear comprehensive rewrite and clarity in the same paragraph, it makes my heart skip a beat or two. So my question is, are you confident that this makes it clear of what the expectations for city staff will be when someone comes in and wants to do a subdivision?
Yes, and the basis of that is the accumulation of issues with all the staff that was involved, which was, engineering, the city surveyor, planning, legal department, on issues that had been rising, that were causing problems. So what we want to do is deal with those. What's the problem? How do we solve it? And so in one sense, you say, this is more technical than the prior code because it's more definitive on here's what we need for preliminary plat. Here are the requirements. Bang, 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 checklist. So not only city staff, but the engineers and developers and the public can walk through that, and we have a better way of sitting down and explaining to them. And part of that was a reorganization of understanding how we process the applications to get it more in sequence. So that, for instance, if you're looking at doing a preliminary plat or a short plat, what specifically do we need? Does it cover 100% of the situations? I wish. The target is to hit 95% of the situations, knowing that there's always 5% out there that don't fit exactly into the model. But then we have enough information here on how to deal with those 5%.
You use the term more technical. With that, it does not mean that it is more prohibitive for commercial or residential development.
Yes.
Councilman Orr.
Easier or harder?
Some of the main goals from the very beginning was to make this ordinance more of a checklist outline basis format. And so from, I don't want to say a simplistic point of view, but one could easily, in my opinion, pick the ordinance up and see the items that are required for the various things that David talked about. Like he referenced the preliminary plat. On the preliminary plat, there's certain things that need to occur to make a preliminary plat a preliminary plat. Our past ordinance was confusing. Things were picked from different parts of the ordinance, and there was a list there, but it wasn't completely comprehensive. This list here, and I'm going to make sure I don't say clarity with comprehensive.
No, that's fine. Clarity, if it's clarity and clear, so it makes it simpler for people to understand, that is good.
That was the goal, was to make this as much of a checklist as we can. So one can read through this and say, I have this item, check. I have this item, check. And so it doesn't matter if someone is familiar with this code or if someone's looking at this code for the first time. Our goal was to make it to look like a checklist so people could read through it and check the items off as they're going through the ordinance. That was one of our goals. Another one of our goals with this, I think, if you would allow me this extra comment, is to allow our ordinance to reflect what is required by the state, or to clean up. And there are several instances in there where we said one thing and the state said something different.
And we try to capture all those things within our ordinance and have them reflect the same.
Are we more restrictive, or is the state more restrictive in terms of what can be done within a subdivision?
That's really a subjective question, and I don't know, what's your opinion? That's a way of saying I don't know.
The more restrictive part, I guess there's two levels to that. Is as far as doing a subdivision plat, the state code dominates. I mean, we have to comply with state code on doing a subdivision plat, which means the licensed surveyors and engineers are involved, are licensed, so they've got to follow state code. They're also obligated to follow local codes. The more restrictive part, like on ours, specifically is, say, the development requirements, which is in the existing. State code for subdivisions does not require a subdivision to be developed prior to the plat being recorded. Okay, that's an important separation. It does not require that. You'll find a mix of it throughout the state, both at the county and the city levels, of how that's implemented. There's a mix that do it like Pocatello does in the existing code, saying we want to assure that the subdivisions are developed, so we make that connection that if you're going to do a subdivision, you're going to develop it. So in this code here, you either post a surety for the development of that subdivision, or you initiate development of the subdivision before you can record the plat. So we're more restrictive in that sense. But like I say, that's a smorgasbord throughout the state on how that's dealt with. So communities that do not have development requirements have complaints about, how that works. Communities that do have development requirements tied to the subdivision plat have complaints about how that's used to. So I wish there was a simple answer, and there's not. We think the main modification in this code is a clear provision with saying you can record a final plat prior to development if you post the proper surety. And we think that hopefully will open up maybe infill development on properties that maybe only get 3 or 4 lots out of it because of where they're located, say up off Cottage or somewhere like that where we have properties. Getting someone to be able to come in and say, I can buy the property, I can hire the surveyor to get the plat done, but I don't have the $100,000 to put all the infrastructure in. I need to be able to sell a couple of the lots before I can do that. So they can do a plat, they can record it, provided that a surety is posted to cover the development costs. Then they can say sell a couple of the lots, they raise the cash to put the infrastructure in so that it can be developed and houses can appear on the lots. So that's one of the objectives of that. The other part of it is that, and it's a standard with the existing code, is you just initiate your development, and when you get done, you record the plat, and lots are sold, and down the road we go.
So I'm going to add to a piece of that. I believe that it's more restrictive at the end of the project, where right now we have a warranty, but it's really controlled on an honor code, that if something is not functioning the way that it should, so let's say a soil isn't compacted correctly, or soil isn't compacted, I'm going to say perfectly, there's no such thing as that, but it's not compacted perfectly, and over a season, through a winter season, that soil consolidates, or it settles and then consolidates, and you have a dip in the road. Well, from a technical standpoint, that dip in the road also manifests as something that could be going on in the trench that caused that to compact and to settle initially. So our current warranty system is that we would call the developer and we would inform the contractor that this needs to be fixed. If both of those entities are no longer available, our the proposed code has a mechanism of gaining funds to fix that before there's a larger problem later on down the road. So I would say that is more restrictive from the development side, but it really it helps the city have funds to be able to fix a problem in the future on that. From a less restrictive side, with respect to the developer, is just like Dave said, is that the developer has an opportunity of recording a final plat before construction of the development is complete. And the purpose that we discussed within the committee is to help infill property develop. Because a lot of times infill property may have 6 or 7 lots, and there could be several lots that are adjacent to well-established roads, which is important to us because if we allow building permits there, we want to make sure, from a public works standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, that all emergency services can get to that location and that it has adequate water and sewer. And a lot of times when you're on infill property, there is a boundary or 2 boundaries where those assets are already established. In our current code, it's difficult to get a building permit. In this code, it allows to have that building permit and allow people to build on that and the developer to generate income so that they can complete the rest of the development. And so, as Dave was answering, I was thinking, I wanted to give you examples on both sides of how that would help. And really, from an infill point of view and a public works point of view, that we want to see that all day long, because generally speaking, the majority of the assets are already established, have already been worked into our maintenance program, and there's only just a few assets that we're going to have to manage sometime in the future on that. And it's using those existing assets to put more houses in on that. So it makes sense then having something completely brand new out and is populated with buildings, sporadically and as time goes on. Because once the development is done and construction's complete and the roads are dedicated and everything's dedicated back to us, from our viewpoint, that's extra lane miles that we're plowing, and perhaps there might not be houses on there to offset those costs with respect to our portion of the tax, property tax on there. But we're still maintaining the water services. We're still observing what needs to go on with the road. We're still plowing it. We still have all the responsibility of that without something on there. So infill, generally speaking, it's within our city. It's on smaller pieces of property, and it's easier for us to maintain even without the majority of those properties developed and built on.
Mr. Mayor, one other question here as a follow-up. I like what you're saying. It sounds very good. Are we doing anything with this rewrite that's going to make the process more expensive for our developers to the extent that we cannot continue to grow? In other words, prices have been fairly stable for a fairly long period of time in terms of lot costs. Is there anything that we're dealing with here that would change that?
The only thing that, again, because this is purely how to subdivide property, not how to develop it, which of course is the majority of your costs is in the development. So as far as this process, one of the added costs is the warranty bond, or the warranty period. In other words, it hasn't been something that has been required, to date on providing actual access to a bond for that 2-year period. So there is a cost associated with that. That's one of the reasons why, through the input with some of the developers, which, like I say, worked out really, really well, was some of the developers have a contractor's bond in place already. They'll just have to see about getting their language changed to cover warranty. So there may be some increased costs there too. So yes, there's an increased cost there. As far as the platting process, we really don't see any additional costs in that because, again, the plat itself has to be under Idaho code, and that hasn't changed. One of the other comments about added costs had to do with property line adjustments, on the fact that there's, based on the way this is written, you have to do a record of survey, and you have to do the appropriate deed work, and that's an application that will be processed through the city so that we can sign off and review and make sure it's consistent with things like existing buildings and setbacks and lot sizes and things like that. However, the qualifier on that is under Idaho codes that deal with surveys, which is a different code that deals with subdivisions. This is where the fun part comes in, of distinguishing between the requirements is that the Board of Engineering and Survey Examiners in recent years, if you're tracking some of the stuff they're doing, they're becoming more and more restrictive on when they are requiring licensed surveyors to record survey records of survey. And they've been really tightening up on what that means. For instance, if they perform certain aspects associated with the survey, under what the board has been doing is they're saying you have to record a record of survey under that circumstance, which means they have to set pins, record a map. So we don't see that we're adding to that, other than the fact that if you're messing with property lines within the city, there's going to be a review process from the city, and the vast majority of the time, if not all the time, you will have to do a record of survey and record the appropriate deeds to avoid, I think, the situation maybe like you were looking at, of having a 10-foot strip that may be owned by the next property owner, but be on a separate deed with a separate parcel identification number, instead of having it actually combined into the same parcel identification number as the parent property. And the fact that the adjacent lot that lost the 10 feet, that deed reflects the fact that it no longer has that 10 feet. You know, those are some of the issues we've been running into. A little extra costs on that, yes.
How about time situation and staff that's available in your department? Is this going to slow our process?
We don't believe so, because the parameters for doing a property line adjustment on that aspect are pretty simple. I mean, it's a pretty quick review. The city surveyor will have to review that record of survey map. I guess the other side of that story is the existing code already has that provision in it. If somebody does a record of survey within the city associated, for instance, with a property line adjustment, it says very clearly that it's supposed to have the city's surveyor signature on it. However, that provision has been grossly ignored by developers, engineers, surveyors, real estate, title companies, and city staff. These things have just been recorded and recorded and recorded. We don't get them until somebody comes in with a building permit. So the existing code is supposed to have this reviewed at the city level, and it has not been observed. So one of the cures of that is saying it has to be reviewed at the city level to eliminate the fact that it's been happening without that review. So yes, some impact to the city staff on that, yes.
What I see the benefit of this is that warranty provides the opportunity that the dollars of the taxpayers as a whole do not pay for a mistake or some issue by the one. When you talk about compaction or settling or things that are not taken care of. The other part I wanted to compliment you on is the people that I come across that are trying to develop or grow Pocatello have complimented the planning people and review people on how willing and helpful you've been in the process. I'm hearing it's more of a how can I help you rather than what do you want attitude. So that's appreciated. Thank you.
I might just add to that Dave's worked long and hard on this. Thank you for all of your work. I know that our former planner thinks the world of you and of the work you've done here, and I know that a lot of people do the same thing. So it's been a lot of work. So thank you.
May I add one last comment? And it's in line with what Mayor Vlad has to say, is that there was legal department was part of this committee. This committee, take a half a step back. This committee met for about six months. We would meet on a regular basis. There were 2 members from legal that was there at all times. Myself, Merrill, and Mark Jensen were there, and former planning director was there, and then also Matt Lewis as well as Dave, and we had some lively debates. In fact, sometimes we'd come in and Dave would say, okay, this is what we want to cover, and we never got off item number 1 because we were arguing.
Discussing.
We were actively discussing what, first was according to state code and how can we implement that into city ordinance, and secondly, how can we encourage people with infill, and how can we make this a straight line, or as much of a straight line process as we can. And so those were the majority of the arguments. Discussions. So I thank those people. I mean, it was an education for me. It opened my eyes to a lot of different things, and that's to me, I appreciate those opportunities.
Well, I might add also that I appreciate the time spent. It's a little disappointing to know that we had opportunities for developers and things to come in, and we only had 3. I know we've got a few in the audience today, and so I appreciate your participation here as well. And so it's important to get those inputs.
Again, we'll be back before you on August 4th with a public hearing. Again, that is an open process for comments from the public and testimony. So this is still a draft document that's being presented. It is the one the Planning Commission has recommended. It is a compromise document. It is a compromise document.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to move on to agenda item 7, but before we do that, we're going to take a break. Joyce needs some time to set up, and we all probably need a break. So with that, we'll be back in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Maybe I should. Thank you for joining us after the break that we just had. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll go back to agenda item number 7, fiscal year 2017 budget review. Finance staff will be present to review a tentative fiscal year 2017 budget draft from June 9, 2016 budget development meeting. This is the final review prior to submitting totals for publication and preparing materials for the public hearing scheduled August 4, 2016. Joyce.
Okay. Joyce Stroshine, Chief Financial Officer, and with me I have
Ashley Linton, Accountant.
And we're here we're going to start off with the news that we don't like. We have not received from the county the market valuation information or the new construction. I've been on the phone with both the auditor's office and the assessor's office. They had let me give you a timeline here on their processes, because that's what I was told. State law says that they have through the second Monday to complete their Board of Equalizations. That's where they listen to the appeals. And on Monday, just so that you're informed, I know we had 2 entities within our jurisdiction that were up for review. One was On and the other one was Super 8 Motel. On received a $13 million reduction in valuation.
Based on just because they asked, or was there an error?
I think it was a combination. The mayor might have better information than I do.
Well, there's a big story here. On never would have questioned their valuation, but our assessor sent a letter to them that said you owe back taxes, and the guarantees that you were given, they're null and void, and so you owe on $70 million. And when he did that, On jumped all over it, and they got that issue fixed. But when they were fixing that issue, On said, wait a minute, you haven't depreciated like you were supposed to. They were paying on the $30 million, but they, when they started looking at the depreciation and how that had not worked, and how the assessor had not assessed that correctly, it ended up with a reduction of another $13 million because of the depreciation of their equipment. So, yeah, we did lose the 13 million.
We know that our market valuation is going to go down by at least 13 million because of that. So that's the first problem. The second problem is the state requires them to provide the districts and the state tax commission the new construction information, the market value information, is not due until the fourth Monday of July, which in this case is July 25th. When I contacted Christy Klausner, the comptroller, last Friday, she said, I'm pretty confident I'll have numbers by late Wednesday, early Thursday this week. And so that's what I had been running my process on. When I contacted Anita yesterday to find out how they were doing in the assessor's office, her and Jared Stein called me back and informed me that they were not going to have numbers, that it would probably be later this week or first of next week. So when I contacted Christy this morning, I was informed. She said that she hopes to have new construction later today. By Friday, we would have the other numbers, but at the latest, it would be Monday.
Of which week would be the question?
Well, that would be the third week. That would be the 18th. And I said, great, I have to have the publication over to the paper by 11 a.m. on Friday. Otherwise, we won't hit our deadlines for our hearing. So that's where we are today.
Good luck, Joyce.
I know.
Joyce, tell me, have those numbers changed? Did the state change those numbers? I know in the past...
State, you mean the deadlines?
Or the dates, I'm sorry, the dates.
No, the dates have been around. I think that it's the difference between, I know that in the past, I can remember in the years when I wasn't in this position, that we would get soft numbers from the county in June and then again in July.
Have they been willing to give you any soft numbers at all?
No, last year they gave me the impression that we would have a no change, and then by the time I received my letter at the last week of July, like I just told you they have to send it, that's when I found out with Hines leaving we had an overall market devaluation. So that didn't work out so well, and when Jared Stein and Anita contacted me after that situation, they told me they would no longer provide any information until they had solid numbers. So that was...
So we at the city have to prepare our budget in the dark because we have no idea what the county's going to do.
No.
And then we can't change our numbers. Once they're published, we can't increase if we need to. We can always decrease.
That's correct.
So what I'm hearing is we have to publish high, take a beating from the public because we published high, and then hopefully get some numbers from the county so that we can put the right numbers out there to levy the tax rate where it needs to be.
Well, and then you have the added law that went into effect this year on foregone. So, I mean, we have lots of issues in timeline problems.
That's right, because now you have to say what you're using the foregone for if you're going to plan on taking it.
Right. We've made forecast assumptions on new construction. We know solid numbers as to what the 3% is. But let's say my new construction comes in a little low. Instead of $222,262, it comes in at $200,000. Well, at that point, if I published just the way we've programmed everything at this point, I would be $22,262 into foregone. Well, the whole law says now that you have to state in your publication that you have decided to take foregone and what that foregone will be used for. But at this point, that's not our intent. But because I don't have numbers, I have to kind of hedge my bet and say, okay, I go with my forecast. We put everything through, we let it be high, and then at the beginning of the public hearing, I have to announce or restate the adjustment that we're making because of the final information. It just puts us in kind of a really awkward situation where our publication loses a lot of its meaning. That's my take on it.
Well, and you brought up the foregone issue. If you have to state what the foregone is for, and you have to have the public hearings, it all, I mean, there's a date specific that it all has to be done, and if it cuts into that, and you have to go into the foregone, you don't have time to notice and publish and have the meetings, and so that's another reduction of what you're going to have, and you lose the opportunity for the foregone.
Let's say we weren't in the situation we're in right now, and we needed every dollar that we're planning to take. We would have to make we would make no assumptions on new construction, and we would estimate that we're going to go into foregone, even if we aren't, because that would be our situation. We have to prepare for the worst and correct to what could be the least impacted, right? So in this particular case, where I think we have some flexibility, I don't know that we need to do that on the new construction side of it.
So basically, we cannot fulfill our responsibilities to the best of our ability because they don't have confidence in their own process.
Their processes don't allow it to meet our timelines.
Well, I think we need to.
Well, not just that. Not just that. They can't give you a soft number because they don't have confidence in their own process.
Well, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if this is a problem statewide, that'd be one thing. I mean, if every city council around the state sitting having the same discussion, then we ought to just move on and take care of business. But if that's not the case, and the problem is here, then we need to do something to put some pressure on the county to change the process. Well, I mean, we're the big player in the county, and we should do that.
Well, and I asked Christy, I said, I can't believe we're the only ones that are facing this situation. And she said, I said, what do you do? I mean, you have to be in the same situation as us. And she says, well, we don't hold our public hearing until August 24th. But they meet weekly, and so they have the ability to push it way to the end of the month. So her recommendation, of course, was that we alter our meeting periods.
Well, I think what we need to do is we need to evaluate, if we have a problem here that's not widespread around the state, then we need to, as a city, we need to get with the county and fix it.
Well, the problem is reoccurring. On semiconductor, we have an error. Amy's or Heinz, we had an error. Hospital, we had an error. And these things are costing us not just tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands.
That's right.
And over the course of time,
that's right.
Millions.
That's right.
The hospital alone was about $500,000.
Yeah.
It was just over there. If I remember right, it's $680,000, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I think we should really understand.
Well, I've thought about letters to the legislature saying, hey, listen, your state law impedes our ability to function and budget.
Well, okay, the state law says that you have to do it by this period.
Right.
Is there any restriction, one, on when, if they do it early?
I don't know.
And two, is there a timeline by state law that determines when they can start their Board of Equalization?
I don't know if that's a county rule that which they're following, or whether it's a state rule. You know, they just have these solid deadlines as to reporting times, right?
Well, and that's the nature. You don't report till the last minute, I guess, and that creates problems. But again, because tax notices are received mid-June typically, or while your payment's due by the 20th of June.
Well, you're getting them. I think sometime in May is when they send out the cards that tell you your assessed value.
All right. So if they could start their Board of Equalization earlier, determine what they're going to do. But again, that doesn't solve the problem they have with their process, that's just creating havoc because they don't do it correctly, like with Portland, with On, and these other places.
Yeah, and my impression is, and I don't know if this is state law or a county law, but they don't start the Board of Equalization until the fourth Monday of June.
So
that being said, I was
going to say, that being said, it's disappointing. We've always in the past had numbers, at least soft numbers. It's disappointing that we get to go in dark this time. But I agree with Gary. We need to do what we need to do, and we need to fix it in the future if we can. And I think it's important to point out that we just have to publish high,
Yes.
probably as high as we can.
Well,
simply
like
so we
Councilman
can
Brown said, then we take a
cover
meeting
ourselves.
by the citizens of Pocatello. Because, and I guess that's, but see, if we have no control over it, it's difficult to swallow the pill that you're taking a beating for something you didn't do.
You have no control over it.
Well,
I don't mind taking a beating if I made a mistake, but
Well,
I
I
don't
guess
like getting beat.
education of our citizens to know that we're kind of forced into this role. I mean, I think they need to understand that part too. Not just the fact that we have to do this and we're publishing high. We publish high because in order to do the best job for them, we have to protect ourselves. Let's say you came back and you had new construction that was $500,000 and you didn't take anything. It's lost. It's too late.
Yeah.
So you have to do something to save yourself in that
Right, 'cause
respect,
pretty
right?
soon you can't function. I mean,
Yes.
Wow, Logan, you've got a big job ahead of you.
All right, let's go ahead
All right.
and move on.
I'm gonna
Is that all the bad news?
Yeah, that was it. I thought it was enough.
Well, it is.
That's plenty of bad news.
I start off bad mood to good.
That's right.
I'm just going to kind of go over what we have done within the budget, okay? We added the water lease revenue of $275,000. I was directed to levy for the 3% more, which was the $807,000. We added back some items that had really depleted budgets to the point where they weren't going to have much in the way of travel, training, and repairs and maintenance on facilities in those select departments. We had the decision that we wanted to replace the police radios, 65 of them, and pay for it as a one-time expense. The SCBA's for the fire department, and they already had $85,000 in their budget towards the purchase. This was the remaining amount. We were going to do that in a one-time. We have concluded our police negotiations. The impact is this, $91,194. Capital for needs developed during the fiscal year. This was kind of we didn't know where we wanted to put it yet, but we wanted to put those dollars aside for council decision for any possible capital needs that we might come across during the year that we want to take care of things with, okay? That equaled $446,207. All these items are in the budget. The budget's balanced. It's ready to go. We also increased the IT department to spend reserves of $75,000. And so this is where we're at right now. This is what the budget is. I will say a couple of caveats here because we're still in the middle of fire negotiations, and so the budget also contains the higher insurance rates. So we're leaving it budgeted high at this point because we haven't concluded those sessions. So we have some flexibility there possibly. Then if we look over, wrong one. If you look at the tax solution, let's just kind of go across the top. What this means is that you're going to take $1,029,288 more in tax. And how is that composed? I'm going to tell you here. I didn't give you this sheet, but how it's composed. Last year we took $26,495,490. The difference is the $1,029,000 that I just said. Your 3% is the $807,026. Your new construction that we forecasted based on prior histories was $222,262. That is the total. That's where that $1,029,000 is coming from in our forecast. So how does that impact us, and are we okay within our levy limitations? So when we look at general fund, all those moves that we did earlier, all those decisions that we made, created some room to maneuver in this fund. So now it's at 0.848%, and our limit is 0.9%. So we're good there. We have room. Liability fund, we are now levying direct for the risk management for the general fund. So we're okay there. There's no limit. Street department, there's no limit. So we're good there. Airport, you're at, okay, 0.03%, and you could be at 0.06, so you're good there. Cemetery, I'm not going to go way out there, but you can see we're in good shape. Library, the same way. And then, of course, recreation is still in a comfortable way because, remember, the big move we made there is we moved zoo from the general fund into the recreation fund. So theirs became a little higher, but they're still in a healthy state. And then, of course, your bond for your animal shelter has no limit. So what does that do to us on the levy side? Well, without any information, I have to go based on this number represents last year's levy market valuation, plus what we are forecasting for new construction, which is about 20 million. So that puts your rate at 0.011%. It's a 3% increase. The 3% increase would cost $100,000 home value, $32 more annually. Your total tax on that would be $1,109. And I kind of took a look at, I thought, when you look back, you look across that sheet, you just look at the rate changes and how we're taking our levy. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Can I say that? It's 4%. Now you're down 2%. Then you're up 3%, down 3, down 3, or 2, down 1. Yeah, I mean, you go across the board. It's all over the place. So I thought, well, what is the average? What are we really taking over time? And over time, we're taking about a 1.23%, 24%. That's your average. If you were to take all those and just say, I think if we were healthy, we would be looking like that every year. In other words, you wouldn't have the highs, the lows. You would be managing at a level that's flat and maybe slight increases, but the 1.25 should be at least a driver if that's what we've needed in history. Now, I'm not saying that's the perfect number. I'm just saying historically that's what you've done over time, have increased it on an annual basis. Those are just food for thought. I guess what I'm looking for today is, am I okay to publish with these numbers? Because I do have to make that decision today. Do I think we're going to have one more meeting after we get market valuation numbers? I think so. Otherwise, we're going to enter the public hearing without you informed of where you are. And I think you need to know that before we get there.
Well, I like where we're at, and I like the fact that we've got that capital money still in there. Mm-hmm. And if something tragic happens along the way, I suppose we have some flexibility in
yeah, if you calculated what was 20 million is worth about 222,000.
Okay.
We figured 13 million was about 65% of that, which is about 145,000. And so you have the room to drop things if that becomes the reality.
But some of that could still be gone with new construction, I mean, what their final number is, so, you know.
I know one number, I know on is down.
Right.
I don't know anything else,
Sure.
so you're right, there could be other absorptions.
How much did you say that was, 145,000?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay, so that takes that $220,000 number that creates your $1,029,000 down to what, 80?
Yeah, something like that. But remember, it's the same thing. New construction will be what new construction is. They don't take devaluation from the new construction bucket. You get that no matter what. The only thing that changes is that your levy rate has an impact. And so my new construction will still be what it is. Your market valuation over here, if you don't have other things to absorb, it could be down below with a $13 million
Okay,
drop.
now my fear is what Councilman Brown began was that we're waiting for numbers from an entity that has no faith in their process, yet we're still assuming that we're going to get new construction in approximately 22 million. How much faith do we have in that number, which is ultimately coming from the
No, that's not coming from the county. That was me looking back at history and saying, what have we averaged.
Okay, historical data.
Historical data. They did not give me anything as far as new construction goes.
But that will eventually come from them, won't it?
It will. It has to, because in part of your L2 application, they have to provide you that data in order for you to file.
And those things should be pretty stable. It's these big things that have killed us. And it's these big things that cause the big swings. I mean, it seems like every year now it's become the norm, you know?
Yeah.
We're all on task. We've been really tight with our budget money. Department's performing well. And there's a $1 billion issue somewhere that we have, you know, that's what's caused the up and down, are those kinds of things.
Yeah. It makes it difficult. You're trying to create a stability, and you're not really receiving that on the other side, are you?
Right.
So that it does make it more of a challenge.
Right. Well, Mayor, I like this approach. I think this leaves us room, if an issue does come along, to go ahead and take care of it. I really like the idea that we're finally addressing two big capital issues in police and fire. You know, I think this gets it done. I feel good about this.
Mr. Mayor. Joyce, I'm really concerned about your forecast for next year.
I know the one that goes to, I don't know why it dropped to the bottom.
Are we all done?
It's
It's over. Let's go home.
Because you don't put any data in for your phone.
I don't know why it dropped to the bottom on that, but I will check into that. I thought maybe we all went on vacation for the day.
Trying to tell us something, Steve.
That's right. The end is there. Prepare. So, Joyce, I have one question, and I agree with Gary. I think this is, as good of an approach as you can take right now. I don't think you can change these numbers at all because we don't know what the county's going to give us. My concern is we went through this list, the property tax summary, and you went general fund, it's healthy, airport healthy, cemetery healthy, library healthy, recreation healthy. Okay. You went through all of those. The numbers that the county gives us, can it change that healthy status to unhealthy? It seems like it did last year.
It's based on the valuation.
Yeah, because it's based on valuation. If I have a devaluation, okay, well, we already know that 13 million equates to about 145,000. I could end up taking a hit. And all of a sudden, this number will end up being higher.
Sure.
If I don't have something to absorb it. But I have room here. That's the whole key of not making this thing go to the very end, which is where we were last year.
We're assuming that we've got enough room to absorb.
Yeah. Well, and remember, too, with the publication of having this budget has been developed with those high insurance rates. I've got 323,000 citywide. Now, that's not all tax funds, but we're going to have some relief coming there.
Exactly.
So you have flexibility to absorb that hit.
Okay, because in our last meeting, we had some discussions about just taking 2%.
On the levy?
Right, but again, as far as publishing, based on what we've heard today, absolutely got to probably leave it at 3%. Now, the second part of that question is, because we don't know, do we do any justification for foregone right now, realizing, fully understanding that if we don't need it, we take that back out of the equation, or we drop our levy percentage?
Well, you have flexibility to adjust. Now, whether you want to adjust this way, this becomes your decision, right? Because we could say we're using the foregone, we're going to use so much of foregone and pretend like we don't have new construction in there. And we could say 222,000 is going to be foregone, and we're going to use it to purchase the police radios or the fire SCBA's help to purchase those. That would be a legitimate comment. The thing is you have 446,000 that isn't tagged. You really could absorb it there. You also have the insurance part that you end up. It depends on how much of this do you want to leave on the plate when we get to the end of this, right? If you feel pretty strongly you want to have 446,000 set aside, then yes, we probably should do what you just said.
Jim, don't you think, is it your opinion that as far as market, just in simplistic terms, housing market, commercial market, have you seen any decline in the market this last year?
No, this year so far, we've actually gone up about 4%. And so I'm optimistic that we're going to see an increase based upon what's actually happening. If they're using old numbers, then it could be negative. But I think the most current things that I see, we're up.
But,
So
but you got $13 million hit.
Yes. My first conversation with Anita, when she first was looking at the numbers, she said, I haven't looked at anybody individually, but I've looked at the whole. And she said, overall, I see growth. And then she said that she saw growth on good new construction numbers. Doesn't tell me what City of Pocatello is doing, but she says Bannock County wide. So I'm hearing that too from them. I just don't know how much the impact of the 13 million and everything else is going to play out.
But I think it's probably safe to assume it's not going to be catastrophic. It's within the limits that we're setting for ourselves here because we have the money in the capital.
Well,
it just appears to me, based on what we've done year after year after year, it's going to turn out okay.
Yeah, and this is the only one through the Board of Equalization that I've heard of that has been what I would say beyond large. Right.
I think I would go down the hall and see what kind of new building permits we have.
Well, we get those every year.
Yeah, we do.
And it's good.
If you can interpret those, we may be able to be a little...
But you're getting into when they will come online versus how much they're valued at. You're looking at statistical data that the evaluations are projected on, which is going to be old and it's going to lag. I know that my house taxes went up a little bit, but I also know a couple friends in the Highland area that because of the homeowner's exemption going up, they're going to be paying a lot less than what mine would offset. So, there's just those type of things going on.
And one thing I would add to that, after Anita told me those generalizations, she says, but I don't know at this point how the homeowner's exemption, any tax abatements are going to impact us
When I look at that, Joyce, in terms of the homeowner's exemption, there's a little shift. It should balance out between commercial and residential.
Well, and like she said, it's really hard to say. And you remember the one spreadsheet I had where I was analyzing how homeowner's exemption with valuation went? It depends on the property. I own 2 homes, and all of a sudden I decide one's going to become a rental property. I lose the homeowner's exemption. That happens around town quite often. And so you can't, that's why you can't predict. There's no predictor on it. It doesn't have a
but even
linear.
But even Jim's analysis that we're up 4%, the homeowner's exemption is based on the state, which is up 6%. So we're losing ground locally because it's a blanket type of policy over the state. So we've lost a little ground, even if we're at 4% growth.
I'm just wondering if I'd take a little foregone, just because we don't have to take it if we're old.
So what we're proposing is publishing high. It doesn't mean we have to take that. We have the opportunity still to cut it back. And Mike makes a really good point. Do we want to take the foregone and just put a note in there that the foregone would be used for these police and fire thing, just to give us that buffer that you might need, and you don't have to take it if that's the case. I mean, but we at least have I kind of feel like we've got to protect ourselves from what's happening right now at the county level.
Is there any problem with us doing that as far as the law?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, what you publish is what you publish, right? You have 1.4 million in foregone. That would be your only problem. If you didn't have any foregone, you couldn't take it, right?
Right.
You can put it out there. What we choose to do between now and the time we adopt an ordinance is that shift.
I think that is smart.
I think that's probably a smart thing.
So you want it to be on top of what I have in here already and add in how much am I doing for foregone then? Do you want me to add those 2 capital items?
Well, let's see. I've got a couple here. Are you okay with that on this side of the table?
Yeah.
Okay. I would just recommend you just do the radios and the SCBA's.
Okay, that value.
Declare
And
that value.
so I'm going to
Declare
make
it
it
for
go that much
400.
higher than what we've already predicted, okay? And that will provide us some hedge.
Oh, I think it's.
Well, I'd rather have the discussion of where we don't spend the money than, oh crud, we don't have the money.
And now what do we have to cut?
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
It's a good idea.
So
We're going to get beat up. We may as well
what are
get
we
beat
going to
up.
do? Put $517,000 under foregone there?
Well, do you want me to put 517 of the
507.
existing? I don't think I need to put that much because I think the only risk you have there is new construction. We're entitled to the 807 and it's not considered foregone. And so,
No, I think you just add the,
Or
what
do you
we're
want me-
talking about is adding those two capital things together and putting that in
As a-
foregone, leaving everything else the same, adding that in foregone.
okay,
With the realization moving forward, hopefully we won't have to use that.
okay.
That's the way I understand it.
517.
Okay, so I'm not increasing the budget. I'm leaving the budget where it is right here.
Yes.
But I'm just noting that 500 and something is going to be.
Now, we need to have
On
a
the income
separate,
side.
we would need to have a separate public hearing on that foregone, is that right?
No, you can combine them, but we have to note in the hearing
Okay.
that this hearing includes that. But that's where the adjustment comes in. If I've gotten this information, we make a decision, then I would say,
We could just say, forget the foregone, we're not willing to take that.
that's-
Yeah, we have that discussion
That's
later.
smart to do that.
okay.
Yeah.
My real fear is as much as this has been such an issue, at least over the last several years with the county and that, is that I really want to make sure that we don't get ourselves into a situation where we're just hamstrung after the publication of the budget. And thank you for keeping on top of it. I mean, that's appreciated.
Yeah, we've been there.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But
It's a little frustrating, and I can say this. I was hoping to come to this meeting with the idea that we could solidify the process, publish correctly, and then have our hearing and adopt an ordinance. That part, I have to admit, I'm frustrated with how things are timelined out. They failed the logistics test.
Well, we still have some of our own budget things that we haven't determined yet.
No.
So we've got to have a little flexibility there.
Yeah.
Because our budget's not hard and fast. I mean, we've got a lot of things on the table still.
Well, we have one more negotiation to wrap up.
And then, based on that negotiation, based on what's already been negotiated, we have to make a decision of what we might do for other city employees, too.
Well, if
See
we,
that in there.
now that is not built in this budget,
I know.
so that would be
But I mean,
difficult.
there's some equity things
Well,
that
all right.
we may have to deal with as a council. We can't have too many subgroups of employees.
Well, let's put it this way. If you're trying to do something for that group, even adjusting your foregone won't address the issue because, okay, let me put it this way. Let's say we didn't have the flexibility with the insurance. Let's say we were solid in those numbers. That means even if I publish high and I say I'm going to take it, but it's only to the general fund, that means my budget is set for all the other funds, and I can't do anything to increase that authority because I won't have published high. It's not built into this budget. The decision to adopt it or not adopt it generally has to be made at this point.
$448,000 to $300,000 and the $500,000 that are still not determined on the income side. I mean, we haven't designated this $448,000. $300,000 that may come in on insurance. The foregone that we're claiming will not give us a degree of freedom.
The 323 will give you a degree of freedom. Won't be enough to give a wage increase that is equitable across all your tables. I don't know, because it depends on the
But we
insurance.
can't take any of the $468,000 to do that.
It's all in the general fund. And technically, when you budget, when you publish, you're publishing how much you're going to spend in each fund. And so if you haven't processed that proposal into the budget, it becomes very, very difficult to do what you just said. because you could be short, because we don't know what those numbers are, right? I can tell you this, and it kind of, well, here's what I would say. If you're looking at doing something like that, because I thought the plan was, and part of our negotiation efforts with the unions have been to move us towards a new pay plan and removing longevity. If we do what you just suggested, let's say we were to give a COLA, we're going to kind of throw a roadblock in that and kind of set us back from being able to move to that next step next year. And so that's why I thought the intent was to
Or we could do it
take
as
this
a bonus that gives us that degree of freedom, which we have had some conversation about.
Yeah, you could do it as a one-time thing that goes away for the next year.
We have enough flexibility in these numbers, the way we're doing it, to do that if we decided to go there.
I'm going to have to look really quick because I haven't drilled down to the various funds on what that insurance difference is per fund. And I'd have to look to see what a 1%.
Oh, I see what you're saying. What you're saying is because of how we're realigning the levy rate based on each individual department to a degree, there might not be a degree of freedom based on what you will publish to that department.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know what I didn't drill it to that point when we measured the 323. That would be one of your dilemmas. So.
I think it's something we can look at is for publishing high like we are. I mean,
well, I guess one thing.
We're definitely publishing high. Sure.
You could do something like this. Let's say we get through all of this. You're left with the 446 that you have designated for capital needs or for other city needs. We can put it either way. At some point, you could do a budget amendment, and you could use those dollars and to give the one-time bonus and create the authority. It would take a budget amendment, though, to do it.
Right, but we're building that money in there to do with.
Yeah, if we end with the end result is those dollars are there, then you could do something like that. I would recommend the one time and it goes away in the following year so that you don't impact what you're trying to move forward on.
Well, I just think that with negotiations ongoing, that there's not a carte blanche. If something's saved, that it just immediately should be played one place. You know, it should have ramifications throughout the city.
Yes.
Okay.
There was just limited time to adopt everything for this year. We have solved a lot of problems, but we haven't solved them all.
So I think that you're right. We have solved a lot of problems. Have we solved them all? No. A little disappointed that, I mean, in the past years, we've had some soft numbers that I feel fairly confident with. This year, I don't have any confidence in anything we've got because we don't have anything. I do know we have to publish high, and I think that the council, from my feel, is feeling like this is the direction we need to go. Put the foregone, 517 on foregone to publish, plus everything else there, and then we'll see where that ends up at our public hearing. We'll definitely have numbers. We should definitely have numbers by then. And I agree with Gary. We probably need to start working with the county and find out if it's a state issue or if it's a county issue. If it's a state issue, we need to get letters out. We need to start pushing the state to change dates. And if it's a county, then we need to do the same thing. We are the big player in the county. And we ought to be able to carry a little bit of weight in some of the decisions being made. So with that, I think that we're good to set it the way it is and publish it the way it is right now and then go from there. Yeah. And I'm not seeing anybody argue with that. So I guess that's the direction we'll go.
What we're publishing and what we will adopt are two different
things. That's correct.
And I think that needs to be said loud and clear.
Well, what you're publishing...
This is our proactive budget.
Yes.
We'll have our reactive budget after our public hearing.
And that is why you publish, you have discussion from the public on what you published. But of course, we'll correct them if we have adjusted information at that point. And then you have another session where you actually adopt, so you can make changes if needed at that point. So you're right. Your end result doesn't necessarily reflect what you published.
Yeah. Okay,
Awesome.
Okay?
sounds good.
Okay.
We know where we're headed.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 8, council working lunch. Members of the council may choose to participate in a working lunch in the Paradise Conference Room to discuss general city topics. No formal action will be voted on. So we'll move into the
Another room.
Paradise Conference Room.
Banana room, is that what you called it?
Yeah, banana.